My son yelled at me, "I'm not going to take care of you anymore. I have my own wife and family to worry about." I looked him straight in the eye and said quietly, "That's fine." The next day, I changed my entire will. When he discovered what I'd done, he came storming into my house demanding answers. And I'm so glad you're here to witness what happened next. Please like this video and stay until the end to hear my complete story. Before I begin my story, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment down below which city you're watching from. I love knowing how far these stories reach. Now, let's get into it. My name is Helena. I'm 67 years old, and I'm a black woman who spent her entire life working hard to give my son the best of everything. I never imagined I'd be here, telling you this story, but I need to get this off my chest. What happened to me was 3 months ago, on a Saturday morning I'll never forget. I was at home, still recovering from a pneumonia that had completely knocked me down over the previous weeks. It had been serious. I was hospitalized for 5 days, came out weak, struggling to do even the simplest thing. Michael, my only son, had been responsible for me during that time. He came over to my house, brought food, helped with groceries, took me to medical appointments. I thought everything was fine, that he was doing all that willingly, but I was wrong. That morning, I was sitting in the living room armchair, still feeling tired, when I heard his car pull up in front of the house. The sound of the door slamming was already different, louder, irritated. He walked in without even properly greeting me, tossed his bag onto the couch, and just stood there staring at me with an expression I had never seen before. "Mom, we need to have a serious conversation. Now." His tone wasn't the tone of someone who came to talk. It was the tone of someone who came to vent, to unload everything he'd been holding in. I felt my heart tighten. "What is it, son?" He let out a dry laugh, the kind that isn't funny at all. "What is it, Mom? I've been putting my life, my house, my family on hold for a month now to come here and take care of you. Every single day it's something. Go to the doctor, pick up medicine, make food, clean this, fix that." I tried to speak, but he raised his hand, cutting me off. "Let me finish. I have Jennifer, Mom. I have 2 little kids who need me. I have a job that's on my back because I keep missing work to come here, and you just sit there waiting for me to solve everything." His words cut me like a razor. I wasn't just sitting there waiting. I was sick, recovering. But to him, apparently, I was nothing but a burden. "Michael, son, I know you have your own life, but I was sick. I needed help." He exploded. "And until when, Mom? Until when am I supposed to drop everything to take care of you? Jennifer has already complained 3 times this week that I'm never home. My kids barely see me. And all for what? Because you got pneumonia and now think I'm obligated to be a nurse." I felt the tears burning in my eyes, but I held them back. I wasn't going to cry in front of him. Not that time. "I never said you were obligated, Michael. But you're my son. I raised you alone my whole life. He cut me off again, now shouting, "I am not going to take care of you in old age. Do you understand that? I'm not. I have my own wife, my own family, my own kids to worry about. You're going to have to figure things out on your own from now on, because I've already done more than enough." His shout echoed through the house. I stood there, frozen, looking at that 39-year-old man I had raised with so much love, so much sacrifice. I worked 2 jobs for years, so he'd never lack anything. I paid for college, helped him buy his first car, put the down payment on his apartment when he got married. And now, the first time I truly needed him, he was throwing it in my face as if I were an unbearable weight. Something inside me broke at that moment. It wasn't sadness. It was an icy clarity. I looked straight into his eyes, those dark brown eyes he inherited from his father, and said, In a steady voice I didn't even know I had. "All right, Michael, I understand perfectly. You can go. You don't need to worry about me anymore." He stared at me, like he was expecting me to cry, to beg, to make a scene, but I did none of that. I just repeated, "You can go. I'll figure things out on my own from now on." He stood there for a few seconds, kind of stunned, but then grabbed his bag and left without saying anything else. I heard the door slam, the car start, the sound of him driving away, and it was only when the silence returned that I finally let the tears fall. But they weren't tears of despair, they were disappointment and anger, and a decision that was already forming in my mind. After Michael left, I stayed sitting in that armchair for hours. I couldn't move. His words kept echoing in my head. "I'm not going to take care of you in old age," as if I were a burden he'd been carrying forever. As if everything I had done for him meant nothing. You know that feeling when it's like the ground disappears beneath your feet. That was exactly it. I had raised that boy alone since he was 2 years old, when his father abandoned us to live with another woman. I worked as a nursing assistant during the day and a cleaner at night for years so he'd never lack anything. I remember coming home at 11 at night, my back aching, my feet swollen, and still having to wake up at 5 in the morning to make his breakfast, pack his school bag, and take him to school. I never complained. I never threw it in his face. I never made him feel guilty for me being tired or for giving up so much. I didn't remarry because I wanted to focus on him. I didn't build a romantic life because I thought he needed me fully. And now, at 67 years old, after a pneumonia that almost killed me, he was telling me I was a burden, that taking care of me for 4 weeks had been an unbearable sacrifice. The tears dried up and gave way to a cold anger. It wasn't that explosive anger that makes you scream and break things. It was that quiet, calculated anger that makes you think clearly. I picked up my phone and called my friend Diane, a black woman like me, the same age, who had always been my confidant. "Diane, I need to talk to you. Can you come over?" She must have heard something in my voice because she said she was on her way. When Diane arrived, I told her everything. Every word, every shout, every insult. She listened in silence, but I could see the outrage growing on her face. When I finished, she said, "Helena, you raised an ungrateful man, and you know what women like us do with ungrateful men. We protect ourselves." She was right. Diane had always been more practical than me, more straightforward. "Do you have a will?" I nodded, yes. I had made it about 10 years earlier, when Michael's father died and I received his life insurance, the house, some savings, a property I rented out that gave me extra income. All of that was in the will for Michael, all of it. "Well then," Diane said, crossing her arms. "So you know what you need to do, right?" I did, but until that moment, I hadn't had the courage to really think about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. I had worked my whole life to build something. The house I was in was mine, bought with sweat after years of paying rent. The rental property had been bought with the life insurance Michael's father left. I had a decent amount saved. I wasn't rich, but I had enough to live with dignity. And all of that, absolutely everything, was destined for Michael in my will. Because I always thought that's what a mother does. She secures her child's future. But what if the child didn't care about you? What if he made it clear you were a nuisance? Why should I secure his future if he didn't care about my present? On Sunday morning, I made my decision. I called Mr. Robert Thompson, the lawyer who had drawn up my will years earlier. He was a black man, serious, respected in the community, who had always treated me with dignity. I explained the situation without going into emotional details just the facts. He was silent for a few seconds and then said, "Mrs. Helena, you have every right to change your will, and if I may say, I think you're doing the right thing. Children need to understand that inheritance isn't an obligation, it's recognition." We scheduled for Monday morning at his office. I could hardly wait. Sunday night was strange. I kept thinking about whether I was being too extreme, whether I was letting hurt feelings speak louder. But then I remembered his shout, "I'm not going to take care of you," and the doubt disappeared. This wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. It was about protecting myself. Because if he thought I was a burden now, imagine when I got older, more fragile, he would abandon me completely, and I wasn't going to let him abandon me and still walk away with everything I had built. No way. On Monday, I woke up early, got ready, and drove to Mr. Thompson's office. His office was downtown, in an old but well-kept building. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk, and he opened a folder with my old will. "You want to change the beneficiaries?" I took a deep breath. "I do. I want to remove my son from everything." He looked at me over his glasses. "Everything, Mrs. Helena? Are you sure?" I looked straight into his eyes. "I am." He made it very clear he wants no responsibility for me. So I'm not going to leave any responsibility for him either. Mr. Thompson nodded and began taking notes. We talked for almost 2 hours. I decided to leave the house to a charity that cared for underprivileged elderly people. The rental property would go to Diane, my friend of decades, who had always been by my side. The savings would be divided among some institutions I supported and to cover any expenses I might have in the future. Michael wouldn't get a single cent. When I left Mr. Thompson's office, with a copy of the new will in my purse, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. Control over my own life, over my own decisions. It wasn't happiness. It still hurt too much to be happiness. But it was a kind of peace, you know. The peace of knowing I had done what was right for me. That I wasn't going to be used, discarded, and still leave everything as an inheritance to someone who treated me like trash. As I walked to my car in the parking lot, I thought, now it's just a matter of waiting for him to find out, and I knew he would. Sooner or later, Michael would find out that the mother he had despised had changed everything, and I wanted to be there to see his face when that happened. 2 weeks had passed since I changed the will, 2 weeks of heavy silence. Michael didn't call, didn't text, nothing. And you know what's worse? I realized I didn't even miss him. After his outburst, after those horrible words, it was as if something inside me had broken for good. I still loved my son, of course, but it wasn't that blind, all-forgiving mother's love anymore. It was a painful, disappointed, distant love. I was starting to get used to the idea that maybe our relationship would never be the same again, and that was okay. Or at least that's what I tried to convince myself of. In the meantime, I started going out more. Diane invited me to attend her church, a Baptist church with a vibrant, welcoming Black community. I was never much of a churchgoer, but I agreed. And that's where I met some incredible women. Mrs. Patricia, who was 72 and had been a widow for 10 years. Mrs. Lorraine, 65, who had just retired after 40 years working as a teacher. And Mrs. Martha, 70, who had contagious energy and was always organizing something. They had a prayer group on Tuesdays and a book club on Thursdays. They invited me to both. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a place where I belonged, where I wasn't just someone's mother or someone's widow. I was Helena, and that was enough. It was on a Thursday, during the book club at Mrs. Martha's house, that my phone rang. It was Michael. My heart skipped a beat. For a second, I thought maybe he was calling to apologize, to say he had gone too far. that he regretted it. I answered. Hello. His voice was different, tense, controlled. Mom, I need to talk to you. Today now. I looked at the women around me. They could tell something was going on. Michael, I'm busy right now. Can we talk later? He let out a dry laugh. Busy? With what, Mom? Look, I'm coming over. We need to talk about something very serious. And he hung up on me. I felt a knot in my stomach. He had found out, I don't know how, but he had found out about the will. I apologized to the women and quickly explained the situation. Mrs. Patricia held my hand. Do you want us to go with you? I shook my head. No, this is something I need to handle on my own. But thank you. Diane insisted on coming with me to my house. I'll stay in the car if you need me. Just shout. I thanked her and went home with my heart racing. It didn't even take 15 minutes for Michael to arrive, and this time he didn't come alone. Jennifer, his wife, was with him. I should have guessed. Jennifer had always been the type to stick her nose where it didn't belong. She was a white, blonde woman, the kind who had always had everything easy in life and never really understood what it meant to struggle. Ever since Michael married her 8 years ago, I had always felt like she looked down on me, as if I were less than her, as if my son had moved up in life by marrying her. And now I was just an inconvenient reminder of his past. They walked in without waiting for an invitation. Michael got straight to the point. Mom, I heard you went to the lawyer last week. I stayed calm. So? He narrowed his eyes. So, you changed the will, didn't you? Took my name off everything. I crossed my arms. I did, and Jennifer stepped forward. That's when things really got ugly. Mrs. Helena, with all due respect, don't you think you're being a little dramatic? Michael took care of you for weeks when you were sick, and now you're going to take away his inheritance over a silly argument. I felt my blood boil. A silly argument. With all due respect, Jennifer, this is none of your business. This is a matter between me and my son. She let out a little laugh. Of course it's my business. I'm his wife. What affects him affects me and my children. That's when I understood everything. It wasn't Michael who was desperate. It was her. Jennifer had already made plans with that inheritance. She had already imagined the house, the money, everything. And now she was watching it all slip through her fingers. Jennifer, I said, keeping my voice steady, my son made it very clear that he doesn't want to take care of me, that I'm a burden, so why should he get everything I built? Michael tried to speak. Mom, I was nervous. I didn't mean it like that. I cut him off. No, Michael, you meant it exactly like that, and that's fine. You have your life, your family, and I have mine, and my life. My assets, my decisions are mine, not yours. Jennifer lost her composure. You're selfish after everything Michael did for you. He dropped everything to take care of you when you were sick, and this is the gratitude. Leaving everything to charity, to strangers. I took a deep breath. Charity, Jennifer, takes care of those in need, unlike my son, who only takes care of someone when it's convenient for him. She turned red with anger. You're going to regret this. When you're old, sick, alone, you'll regret it because we won't be here. You're going to die alone in a nursing home and no one will care. Her words were cruel, but they didn't shake me the way she expected because I had already made my decision. I had already made peace with it. Michael stayed silent, and that silence hurt the most. Because he didn't defend me. He didn't tell his wife to shut up. He didn't say she was going too far. He just stood there, silently agreeing with every venomous word that came out of her mouth. And it was at that moment that I was absolutely sure I had done the right thing. Are you done? I asked. Because I have things to do. Jennifer huffed. Let's go, Michael. Leave her here with her pride. That's probably all she'll have left in the end. They left, slamming the door. I stood there in the middle of the living room, shaking, not from fear, from anger, from indignation, but also from relief. Diane rushed in. She had heard everything from outside. "That woman is a viper," she said, hugging me, "and your son is a coward for not defending you." I agreed. Michael had always been weak when it came to Jennifer. She called the shots, and he obeyed. It had always been that way, but now I saw it clearly. My son was not the man I thought I had raised. He was weak, easily manipulated, and worst of all, ungrateful. That night, I called Mr. Thompson and told him what had happened. He told me to stay calm. "Mrs. Helena, the will is filed, signed, and witnessed. There's nothing they can do. You're protected." I hung up the phone and, for the first time since all of this began, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew they had done the right thing. Someone who had taken the reins of their own life. And honestly, that was liberating. After that horrible scene with Michael and Jennifer, I expected to feel devastated, completely destroyed even. But you know what happened? The opposite. I felt free. Free from that suffocating expectation of being the perfect mother, the mother who forgives everything, who accepts everything, who lets herself be stepped on just because she's the mother and has to put up with it. No. I was Helena, a 67-year-old woman who had built a life with her own hands, who had survived abandonment, prejudice, years of hard and exhausting work. And if my son didn't value that, if my daughter-in-law thought she could treat me like trash, that was their problem. I had dignity, and I wasn't going to give it up for anyone. The following weeks were strange, but surprisingly good. I threw myself headfirst into church activities. The Tuesday prayer group became my refuge. Mrs. Patricia introduced me to other women who had also gone through deep disappointments with their adult children. It was impressive and, at the same time, sad to realize how common that was. Mrs. Lorraine had a 42-year-old son who only showed up when he needed to borrow money and then disappeared for months. Mrs. Martha had a daughter who lived just 3 blocks away and hadn't visited her in 2 years. 2 years. Because her husband didn't get along with his mother-in-law. I discovered I wasn't alone in this pain, that my disappointment wasn't unique, and that, in some strange way, was comforting. Not because I wished harm on anyone, but because it was comforting to know it wasn't my fault, that I hadn't failed as a mother just because my son had become an ungrateful man. I started volunteering at the church's community center. Every Wednesday morning, I helped serve lunch to people experiencing homelessness. There was a man named James, a black man around 60, who always thanked me with a toothless smile and said, "God bless you, sister." That warmed my heart in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Every Friday afternoon, I took part in a sewing group where we made blankets and throws to donate. There were 8 women, all black, all with stories of overcoming. While we sewed, we talked about everything: children, grandchildren, husbands, life. It was free therapy. My life, which used to revolve around waiting for a call from Michael, waiting for him to show up, living in expectation of being included in his life, was now full of purpose, of real people who valued me, of activities that made a difference. I was okay, truly okay, for the first time in a very long time. Diane and I started going out to dinner every Thursday after the book club. We went to a soul food restaurant near the church, a cozy place with food that warmed the soul. We ate fried chicken, mac and cheese, sautéed collard greens, and talked for hours. Diane told me about her children who were present and grateful, and I pretended not to feel envy, but she noticed. Helena, she said one of those nights, holding my hand across the table. You deserved better, but you're going to be okay. You're too strong to let this destroy you. And she was right. I was strong. I always had been. It was on a Saturday morning, almost a month after the explosive fight with Michael and Jennifer, that things took another turn. I was at the Kroger supermarket, slowly pushing my cart down the produce aisle, when I saw them. Tyler, my 7-year-old grandson, and Emma, my 5-year-old granddaughter. They were with Jennifer, who was pushing the cart with that rigid, unpleasant posture that was her trademark. The moment she saw me, she turned her face away and started pushing the cart in the opposite direction, as if I were invisible. But Tyler saw me. Those sharp little brown eyes met mine and lit up. "Grandma!" he shouted, and ran toward me, his short legs moving as fast as they could. My heart almost burst with emotion. I hadn't seen those children in over a month, a whole month without seeing them, without hugging them, without hearing their laughter. I bent down, ignoring the pain in my knees, and hugged Tyler tightly, smelling the children's shampoo in his hair. Emma came right after, throwing herself into my arms too, almost knocking me over. "Grandma, Grandma, I missed you so much," Emma said, squeezing my neck. My eyes filled with tears. "Me too, my love. Grandma missed you so much too." Tyler pulled back a little and looked at me seriously. "Grandma, why don't you come to our house anymore? Why don't you call anymore? Mom said you're too busy for us." I felt a stab in my chest. Jennifer had lied to the children. She had put the blame on me. Before I could answer, I heard her voice, cold and sharp like a blade. "Kids, let's go, now." Her tone left no room for discussion. Tyler looked at me, confused. "But Mum, it's Grandma. We haven't seen her in a long time." Jennifer stepped closer, her face red with barely contained anger. I said, "Let's go, now." She grabbed the children by the hand, one on each side, and practically dragged them down the aisle. Emma started crying, that desperate cry of a small child. "I want to stay with Grandma. I want Grandma." Jennifer didn't look back. She kept walking, dragging my children away from me as if I were some kind of threat, some kind of danger. I stood there, in the middle of the supermarket aisle, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. People walked past me. Some looked curiously, others looked away in embarrassment. I was shaking, not with anger, not yet, with pain. Because that wasn't about me and Michael. It wasn't about inheritance, a will, an adult fight. It was about the children, innocent children who were being used as a weapon, as a tool for punishment. Tyler and Emma were being deprived of their grandmother because their mother was a petty, manipulative woman. And my son was allowing it. He was letting it happen. I abandoned the cart right there and left the supermarket. I got into the car, closed the door, and broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried since the day Michael's father died. I cried for the injustice, for the cruelty, for the loss, because I was losing my grandchildren. I was being erased from their lives, and they didn't even understand why. When I managed to pull myself together enough to drive, I went straight to Diane's house. She opened the door, saw my face, and pulled me inside. What happened? I told her everything, between sobs. The scene at the supermarket, the children crying, Jennifer dragging them away from me. Diane was furious. "Helena, this is emotional manipulation. This is alienation, and you know it is. They want you to back down, to change the will again, to beg for forgiveness. They're using the children as leverage." I knew she was right, but it hurt. It hurt in a way I can't even describe. What do I do, Diane? I can't just accept this. I can't let them erase me from those children's lives. Diane looked me straight in the eyes, serious. "You find a family law attorney. Grandparents have visitation rights, Helena. In many states, including ours, you can petition the court for the right to see your grandchildren. If they're blocking contact, you can, and should, file a case. The idea of suing my own son made me feel physically sick. It was like admitting a definitive defeat, like declaring war on my own family. But at the same time, it was either that or accept being erased. It was either that or let Jennifer win, and I wasn't going to let that happen. On Sunday, after the service, I talked to Mrs. Patricia about it. She took me to a quiet corner of the church and held my hands. My daughter cut me off from my grandchildren's lives for 3 years. Helena, 3 years without seeing those children grow up. 3 birthdays, 3 Christmases, 3 years of memories I'll never get back. Her eyes filled with tears. I went to court. It was hard, emotionally expensive, but I got visitation rights. Today I see my grandchildren twice a month. It's not ideal, it's not what I dreamed of, but it exists. They know me. They know their grandmother loves them, and that's already something. She gave me the contact information for her attorney, Miss Karen Mitchell, a respected black woman who specialized in family law and specifically in grandparents' rights. Monday morning, as soon as it was light out, I called Mrs. Mitchell's office. The receptionist answered, and when I explained my situation, she managed to fit me in for an emergency consultation on Wednesday. The next 2 days were pure agony. I could barely sleep, replaying everything in my head, wondering if I was doing the right thing, if I wasn't overreacting. But then I remembered Emma's little face crying in the supermarket, Tyler's confused look, and the doubt went away. Wednesday arrived. I got ready carefully, put on my nicest dress, the navy blue one that always gave me confidence. I drove to Miss Mitchell's office, which was in a modern building downtown. When I walked in, I was greeted by a woman in her early 50s, elegant, with long braids and an expression that was firm and compassionate at the same time. She shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Helena, it's a pleasure to meet you. Please, have a seat." I sat in the leather chair across from her desk and began to tell my story. I told her everything from the beginning: the illness, the fight with Michael, the horrible words, the change to the will, his and Jennifer's invasion of my home, and finally the scene at the supermarket. She listened attentively, taking detailed notes on a yellow pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and interlaced her fingers. "Mrs. Helena, you have a strong case, a very strong one. In our state, grandparents have the legal right to request visitation when there is a pre-existing relationship with the grandchildren, which is clearly your situation. I'll be honest with you, this process will be emotional. It will be difficult. Your son will have to testify, you will have to testify, and it could get ugly, but you have every right to fight for those children." I felt immense relief mixed with fear. "What do I need to do?" She smiled. "First, we'll formally notify your son, requesting amicable visitation. If he refuses, we'll file a petition with the court requesting supervised visitation initially. Over time, we can expand to unsupervised visitation, depending on how things develop." I signed the papers authorizing her to represent me. It was surreal. I was officially suing my own son, but at the same time, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just fighting for the right to be a grandmother, for the right to love my grandchildren, for the dignity of not being erased. I left her office 2 hours later with a folder full of documents and my heart a little lighter. I was taking action. I was no longer being passive, no longer accepting things. I was fighting back. And that, in some strange way, gave me strength. I had been strong my whole life. I raised a child alone, worked 2 jobs, overcame racism, sexism, poverty, and I wasn't going to stop now. I wasn't going to let them remove me from those children's lives without a fight. If it was war that Michael and Jennifer wanted, it was war they were going to get. The notice was sent to Michael on Friday. Dr. Mitchell called me to confirm that he had received it in person. Mrs. Helena, he signed for it at 2:37 p.m. today. Now we wait for his response. He has 10 days to respond formally. I hung up the phone and sat in the living room, staring out the window. Part of me expected him to call right away, maybe yelling, maybe crying, maybe begging, but the phone stayed silent. Friday passed. Saturday passed. Sunday passed. Nothing. On Monday morning, I was at the community center helping organize clothing donations when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. Hello. A female voice, professional, cold. Mrs. Helena Johnson, this is Sarah Reynolds, the attorney representing Michael Johnson. I received the visitation petition your attorney sent. I'd like to schedule a mediation before we take this to court. Would you be available on Wednesday at 10 a.m.? My heart started racing. Michael had hired a lawyer. This was real. It was really happening. I'll check with my attorney and get back to you. I hung up, shaking. I called Dr. Mitchell immediately. She was already expecting my call. Yes, his attorney contacted me as well. This is good. Helena, it means they want to negotiate. It's always better to resolve things outside of court, especially when children are involved. We scheduled the mediation for Wednesday. The next 2 days were torture. I could barely eat, barely sleep. I kept rehearsing what I would say, how I would behave, whether I'd be able to control myself when I saw Michael. Wednesday arrived. I got dressed carefully. A gray business suit, discreet earrings, hair pulled back into a bun. I wanted to look respectable, serious, not emotional. Diane insisted on coming with me to the office, even though she couldn't go inside. I'll wait downstairs. You're going to do great, friend. The mediation was held in a neutral office downtown. When I arrived, Dr. Mitchell was already there, reviewing documents. Breathe, Helena. Stay calm. Let me speak first. But if you need to say something, be direct and honest. We walked into a conference room, and there he was, Michael, sitting next to a blonde woman in a black suit. Sarah Reynolds, I assumed. He didn't look at me when I walked in. He kept his eyes fixed on the table. Next to him, to my surprise and horror, was Jennifer. She shot me a look full of pure venom. The mediator, a white woman in her early 60s named Mrs. Patterson, greeted us and explained the rules. This is an informal mediation. The goal is to find an agreement that benefits all parties, especially the children. Let's maintain respect and civility. Sarah Reynolds began. My client is willing to allow supervised visitation once a month on Saturdays night for 2 hours at his home, with either him or his wife present. Once a month? 2 hours. Supervised? As if I were a threat? Dr. Mitchell replied calmly, that is unacceptable. Mrs. Helena had a close and consistent relationship with her grandchildren prior to this family conflict. She saw them weekly, cared for them, and played an active role in their lives. We are requesting unsupervised visitation once a week, on Saturdays, for 4 hours, with the possibility of occasional overnight visits. Jennifer exploded. Overnight, she thinks I'm going to let my kids sleep at her house after everything she's done. Mrs. Patterson interrupted her. Mrs. Johnson, please maintain your composure. But Jennifer didn't stop. She cut her own son out of the inheritance. She's vindictive, manipulative. It's not safe to leave the children with her. I felt my blood boil. Dr. Mitchell placed a hand on my arm, calming me, and responded. Mrs. Helena made legal and legitimate decisions regarding her own assets. That has nothing to do with her ability to be a loving and responsible grandmother. Michael finally spoke. His voice sounded tired, defeated. "Mom, why are you doing this? Why are you creating all this drama?" I couldn't hold it in. Drama? Drama. Michael, you yelled at me, told me you wouldn't take care of me, treated me like trash. Your wife stopped me from seeing my grandchildren at the grocery store, made Emma cry. And I'm the one creating drama. My voice was rising, and I knew I needed to control myself, but it was too hard. I just want to see my grandchildren. That's all. See Tyler and Emma. Be part of their lives. Why are you denying me that? Jennifer let out a dry laugh. Because you don't deserve it. You're toxic. You're poisoning this family. Something inside me snapped. Toxic. I'm toxic. The woman who raised her son alone, who worked 2 jobs to give him everything, who never asked for anything in return except a minimum of respect. I looked at Michael. Do you remember when you were 10 years old and broke your arm playing basketball? Do you remember who stayed at the hospital with you all night? Who missed work for a week to take care of you? Me. It was always me. Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't care anymore. And when you got married, when you had your kids, I was there. I bathed those babies. I taught Tyler how to tie his shoes. I braided Emma's hair. I was present, and you have the nerve to say I'm the problem. Michael lowered his head. He didn't answer. Jennifer was the one who spoke. All of that sounds very nice, but it doesn't change the fact that you disinherited your own son. That says a lot about your character. Dr. Mitchell cut her off. Mrs., Helena's assets are her business and hers alone. They are not up for discussion here. We are talking about her right to see her grandchildren. Sarah Reynolds tried to regain control. My client is offering supervised monthly visitation. It's a generous offer given the circumstances. Dr. Mitchell shook her head. It's not generous. It's insulting. And if that's his final position, we'll see this in court. The mediation ended without an agreement. We walked out of that room having resolved nothing. I was exhausted, emotionally shattered. Diane was waiting for me downstairs and hugged me tightly when she saw me. Didn't work, I shook my head. We're going to court. She took me home and stayed with me the rest of the day. Mrs. Patricia, Mrs. Lorraine, and Mrs. Martha showed up later that afternoon with food and words of comfort. You're doing the right thing, Helena, Mrs. Patricia said. Those children need you, and you need them. That night, alone in my bedroom, I looked at the photos of Tyler and Emma on my nightstand. One was from Emma's 4th birthday, where she was wearing a pink dress and a huge smile. The other was Tyler at 5 years old, holding a soccer ball. I remembered those days so clearly. I ran my fingers over the photos and made a silent promise. I will not give up on you. No matter how long it takes, no matter how much it hurts, Grandma will fight for you. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later, 3 weeks that felt like an eternity. Dr. Mitchell prepared me for what was coming. They will try to paint you as unstable, vindictive, unfit. You need to stay calm. Show that you are a loving, stable grandmother who has a lot to offer these children. I began gathering evidence. Photos of me with my grandchildren over the years. Old messages from Michael thanking me for taking care of them. Birthday cards the children had made for me. Every piece of evidence was a stab to the heart because it showed how much I had been part of their lives and how hard they were trying to erase that. The day of the hearing finally came. I woke up at 5 in the morning, even though the hearing wasn't until 10. I couldn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, running everything through my head, asking for strength to face that day. I got dressed in the same gray suit I wore to mediation, but this time I put on the pearl necklace my mother left me when she died. It was my little protection charm. Diane showed up at 8 to pick me up. She was dressed up too, like she was the one about to testify. "You've got this, Helena. The truth's on your side." When we got to the courthouse, Dr. Mitchell was already there, reviewing last-minute documents. She took me into a small private room and gave me final instructions. "Helena, be honest, be yourself. Only answer what you're asked. Don't let them bait you. Stay calm, no matter what they say." I nodded, but my heart was pounding. We walked into the courtroom. It was smaller than I expected. The judge, a black man around 55 named Judge Williams, was already seated. Michael and Jennifer were on the other side with their attorney. Jennifer shot me that hateful look I'd gotten used to by now. Michael didn't look up. The hearing began. Sarah Reynolds presented their case first. She basically painted me as a vindictive woman who disinherited her son and was now trying to use the grandkids as a way to manipulate him. It was ridiculous, but she said it with so much confidence that for a second I was scared the judge might believe it. Jennifer testified. She said I was emotionally unstable, that I'd made thinly veiled threats during mediation, that she feared for the children's emotional safety around me. I dug my nails into my palms, trying not to shout that it was all a lie. Then it was my turn. Dr. Mitchell called me to testify. I sat in the chair, put my hand on the Bible, and took the oath. She started with simple questions: my name, my age, how long I'd been part of my grandkids' lives. I answered everything calmly. Then she asked about my relationship with Tyler and Emma. I talked about the afternoons we spent together, the books we read, the games, the affection. I showed photos, I showed cards the kids had made for me. I showed old messages from Michael asking me to pick the kids up from school, to watch them when he and Jennifer had plans. Then Sarah Reynolds cross-examined me. "Mrs. Johnson, is it true that you disinherited your son?" I took a deep breath. "It's true that I changed my will, yes," she smiled, like she'd won. "And why did you do that?" I looked at the judge. "Because my son made it very clear he didn't want any responsibility for me, that I was a burden, that he wouldn't take care of me, and I figured that if he doesn't want any commitment to me, I also shouldn't leave any commitment to him." She pushed harder. "Don't you think that's revenge?" I shook my head. "It's not revenge, it's protection. I worked my whole life to build what I have, and I decided I wanted to leave it to people and institutions that actually care about me." Judge Williams looked at me. "Mrs. Johnson, you understand that the inheritance issue is separate from the visitation issue?" I nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm not here because of money or inheritance. I'm here because I love my grandkids and I'm being kept from seeing them. That isn't fair to them or to me." He asked a few more questions about my health, my home, my routine. I answered honestly. I told him about my volunteer work, my church community, how I had a structured, meaningful life. After almost 3 hours, the judge said he would deliberate and issue a decision in a week. We walked out of the courthouse exhausted. Diane hugged me tight. "You were incredible in there, incredible." But I didn't know if it was enough. The next week was torture. I tried to distract myself with volunteering and church activities, but my mind kept snapping back to the hearing, to what the judge might decide. Friday came. "Doctor." Mitchell called me at 2 in the afternoon. "Helena, the decision is in. You won." My heart practically stopped. What?" She was smiling. I could hear it in her voice. "Unsupervised visitation, twice a month, Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. with the right to an overnight once a month." The judge was very clear. You proved you're a loving, capable grandmother, and there's no reason to deny the children the right to have a relationship with you." I broke down crying, tears of relief, of victory, of gratitude. The first visitation was scheduled for the following Saturday. I spent the whole week getting everything ready. I cleaned the house, bought their favorite snacks, planned activities. When the doorbell rang at 10 in the morning, I ran to open it. Michael was there with Tyler and Emma. He handed me a bag with their things. "I'll pick them up at 4. He didn't say anything else, but I didn't care because right there in front of me were my grandkids. Emma hugged me tight. "Grandma, I knew you hadn't forgotten about us." Tyler was more reserved, but he loosened up soon enough. We spent the whole day together. We made cookies, watched cartoons, played in the backyard. When Michael came back to pick them up, Emma didn't want to leave. "Can I come back next week, Grandma?" I smiled through tears. "In 2 weeks, my love, but Grandma will be waiting." The months that followed brought a new routine. Visitation became the best day of my life every other week, and the rest of my life was full too. My volunteer work at the community center grew. I started leading the sewing group. The church asked me to mentor younger women who were going through hard times. My house, which used to be quiet and lonely, was now full of friends, laughter, and purpose. Michael and I never went back to the relationship we had before, and that was okay. I'd made peace with that. He followed the court order, brought the kids, picked them up on time. We were polite but distant. Jennifer kept that sour look, but it didn't matter anymore. I had won. I hadn't won my son back, that was true, but I'd won something much more important: my dignity, my self-respect, and the right to be a grandmother. Sitting in my backyard on a Saturday afternoon after saying goodbye to Tyler and Emma, I thought about everything that had happened: the illness, the fight, the will, the lawsuit, the victory. It had been a painful journey, but necessary, because I learned something fundamental. Self-love isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't revenge. Fighting for your rights isn't drama. And sometimes, the family we choose, our friends, our community, the people who truly value us, matters just as much as blood. I was 67 years old, with a whole life ahead of me, and for the first time in a long time, I was genuinely at peace. Not the kind of peace that means everything is perfect. The kind of peace that comes from fighting, surviving, and coming out stronger on the other side.